As a young journalist and the new guy in the office, I was eager for a big story to prove myself. So when I was asked to spend a week traveling and researching on my own, I agreed without thinking about it. That's what led me to this forgotten motel in the middle of nowhere. I needed to write about small, dying towns, and this place seemed perfect for my story. But from the moment I arrived, I knew that this motel was more than just an old building. The sign, Ravenwood Lodge, was barely hanging on, flickering in the darkening sky. The whole place looked like nobody cared about it for years. Weeds grew everywhere, and the parking lot was empty except for my car. Walking into the lobby was like stepping into a different world. It was dim inside, only a few weak lights barely showing the way. The air smelled old and dusty, like a room that's been closed for too long. The paint on the walls was peeling and the carpet had seen better days. At the front desk, there was just one guy. He looked bored, like he hadn't seen a guest in ages. I told him I needed a room. He didn't ask for my name or anything. Just handed me a key with a number 7 on it and pointed to the hallway. His face didn't change, no smile, no welcome, nothing. It felt weird, but I was too tired to think much about it. I took the key and headed to my room, feeling the weight of the silence around me. The motel felt empty, and I had a terrible feeling that this place had secrets, the kind that makes you wish you never found them. That first night, I barely got any sleep. It wasn't just the bed, which was as hard as a rock. It was the sounds. Around midnight, I heard voices from the room next to mine. They were arguing, loud and angry. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was enough to keep me awake. Then, suddenly, it all stopped. Not like they decided to call it a night, but like someone had hit the mute button. The silence that followed was even worse than the shouting. It hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. The next day, I decided to walk around the town. It was small, the kind where everyone knows everyone. But when I mentioned where I was staying, their faces changed. They looked at me like I was a ghost. I heard whispers about people going missing. Vanished into thin air, one old man said, looking over his shoulder like he was scared to be overheard. They all mentioned the motel, but no one seemed to want to say too much. It was like they were scared, not just of what was happening, but of talking about it. I needed to know more, so I dug around, talking to the few people who would speak to me. That's when I found out about the motel's past. Years ago, something bad happened there. No one would give me the full story. But whatever it was, it turned the place into what it was now, a magnet for trouble. People whispered about illegal stuff going on and the kind of people who don't like questions. That night, things got really weird. I woke up to strange noises in the hallway. It sounded like whispers and soft footsteps. I got out of bed and peered through the peephole. I couldn't see much, just shadows moving back and forth. My heart was racing. I tried to call the front desk, but the phone was dead. Then I tried my cell phone, but there was no signal. It was like the motel was cut off from the rest of the world. I felt trapped, alone in this creepy place with its secrets and shadows. I knew I had to find out what was going on, but I was starting to wonder if that was such a good idea. I couldn't just sit in my room anymore, not with all these questions swirling in my head. So, late that night, I crept out of my room and down the dark, narrow hallway. The motel felt different at night, like it was hiding things in the shadows. I made my way to the office, the only place I thought I might find some answers. The door was unlocked, which struck me as odd. Inside, I found a dusty old logbook on the desk. My hands were shaking as I flipped through it. There were names, dates, and notes, all written in a hurried scrawl. Some names were marked with strange symbols. It hit me like a punch in the gut. These were the names of the missing people. The notes were cryptic, but the more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a rundown motel. It was a front for something much darker, something evil, like a human trafficking ring. Just then, I heard footsteps. I hid behind the desk as the door creaked open. It was the motel manager, and he wasn't alone. They were talking in low, urgent voices about someone snooping around, about me. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. But they left after a few minutes, and I knew I had to get out of there fast. I snuck out of the office and back to my room. I grabbed my stuff and made a beeline for the exit. But as I stepped outside, they saw me. There was shouting, and I ran for my car. My keys were shaking in my hand, but I managed to get the car started. That's when the real chase began. They were in a car right behind me, headlights blazing in the dark. I pushed my old car as fast as it would go, taking sharp turns onto narrow roads, trying to lose them. My heart was in my throat, every turn a gamble, but somehow I did it. I lost them in the twisting roads and didn't stop driving until I saw the lights of the nearest town. I pulled over, still shaking, and called the police. It all came pouring out. The motel, the logbook, the chase. They told me to stay where I was and that they were on their way. As I waited, watching the sunrise, I knew I had just escaped something terrible, and I had a story to tell, one that would finally bring the darkness of Ravenwood Lodge into the light. When the police arrived, I handed them the logbook I stole from the office and had with me in the car, my hands still shaking. I told them everything. The arguments, the shadows, the chase. They listened, their faces growing more serious with every word. Within hours, they raided Ravenwood Lodge. It was all over the news. The motel was a front for a human trafficking ring, and the manager and his crew were arrested. I watched from a distance, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. I had gone there to write about a dying town, but uncovered a story that was so much bigger, so much darker. As I sat down to write my article, I couldn't help but reflect on what had happened. I had always believed in chasing the truth, no matter how hidden it was. But this was different. I had come face to face with real evil, and it had almost cost me my life. It made me realize the power of journalism, how it can shine a light in the darkest of places. My story about the motel changed everything. For the town, for the victims, for me. The town was in shock. But there was a sense of hope, too. Ravenwood Lodge was shut down, and the town was finally able to start to heal. As for me, this experience changed the way I looked at my work. I wasn't just writing stories, I was giving a voice to the voiceless, exposing the evils hidden in plain sight. It was more than just a job, it was a responsibility, one that I was now more committed to than ever. The story I had gone there to find had become secondary. I had found a bigger story, one that truly mattered. And as I sent off my article, I knew this was just the beginning. I had many more truths to uncover, and I was ready for whatever came next. I love my job as a corporate director, but as a single woman, I still get nervous every time I have to travel alone for work. As soon as I stepped into the hotel lobby, though, I felt a sense of security. The place was bustling, full of people with laptops and suitcases, all there for work like me. The hotel, situated right next to the airport, was modern and clean, with big windows letting in lots of light. It was busy, but in a good way, like everyone knew exactly where they needed to be. The lobby had everything: screens showing flight times, a small spot for coffee, and staff moving around quickly, helping everyone. I was impressed by how organized it all was. Around the room, I noticed security cameras, which made me feel even more comfortable. It seemed like a place where nothing could go wrong. But, even in this busy, safe place, I didn't realize that there was someone watching. Someone quiet and out of place, who didn't fit into the busy world of this hotel. The first time I saw him, he was just a quiet old man sitting in a chair in the lobby. He looked harmless, just sitting there, watching people. But every time I walked through the lobby, there he was, sitting in the same chair. There was something about the way he stared that made me feel weird. Every time I walked by, his eyes would follow me, never looking away. It was kind of creepy, but I told myself he was just a lonely old man. On the second morning of my stay, I found a note hanging on my hotel room door. It described what I wore the day before, right down to the color of my shoes. I couldn't help feel excited. Right away, I thought of the speaker from the day before. I got to chat with him after he presented a seminar to the group. We bumped into each other during a coffee break, and there was definitely a spark. I couldn't help looking over at his table a couple of times after that, and both times I was sure he was looking at me too. The note had to be from him. That evening, I dressed with extra care for the cocktail event, choosing my outfit to impress. I remember feeling a mix of nerves and excitement, rehearsing in my mind how I'd playfully bring up the note. The perfect moment came when I found myself standing next to him at the bar, our conversation flowing easily. With a coy smile, I mentioned the note, expecting a flirtatious admission. But his response wasn't what I expected. He looked genuinely puzzled, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Note? I didn't leave you any note," he said, his tone sincere. My heart sank. The playful, flirty bubble burst, and I could feel my cheeks getting red from embarrassment. But that embarrassment quickly turned to fear. If it wasn't him, then who was watching me so closely? I had to get out of there. Without even touching my drink, I left the cocktail gathering and decided to go for a run on the treadmill and clear my mind. In the hotel gym, my nerves were still rattled from the realization that someone else was observing me. I was trying to focus on my workout, but I couldn't shake off the unease. That's when I felt it, the sensation of being watched. I glanced around and saw him, the old man from the lobby. He was standing at the door, his eyes fixed on me, unblinking and intense. My heart raced with fear. As soon as our eyes met, he turned and left in a hurry. It was too much of a coincidence. He was everywhere I went. This wasn't just some harmless old man. He was stalking me. And now, with the note and this unsettling encounter, I realized the danger I was in. My nerves were now shot. I needed answers. Since the gym was on the ground floor, I ran straight to the lobby, laser-focused on getting to the reception desk. I wasn't sure if the man was still around. I didn't dare to look. I described the old man to the woman at the front desk, hoping for some explanation. What the woman told me only made things worse. The man was a former employee, known for his strange behavior. "He's harmless," she said, but her words did little to ease my fears. How could I feel safe knowing he was just wandering around? After helping myself to a glass of water, I decided to head back to my room. As I waited for the elevator around the corner and down the hall from the lobby, alone, I felt a presence behind me. It was him, the old man. My heart sank. The doors opened, and I stepped in, hoping he would stay back. He didn't. He followed me in, standing too close. The doors closed, and there we were, alone. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with those unnerving eyes. I could hardly breathe. The tension in that small space was unbearable. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this go on. I stepped out and started walking super quick. He followed slowly behind. My fear turned to anger. I spun around to confront him, to tell him to leave me alone. But as soon as I faced him, he started walking towards me, faster this time. Panic surged through me. I turned and ran, my heart pounding, as I heard his steps behind me. I raced down the hallway, turning corner after corner, trying to lose him. I spotted a service room and slipped inside, holding my breath. I listened as his footsteps slowed, then stopped. I waited, scared to even move. After what felt like forever, I heard him walk away. I stayed hidden for a while longer, shaking and trying to calm down. Finally, I gathered the courage to leave the room and went straight back to the hotel's front desk. I told them everything. The note, the gym, the elevator, and now the chase. The staff immediately called security. They found the old man still lurking in the hotel corridors. Security handled it from there, escorting him out of the hotel. The police got involved too, taking my statement about everything that had happened. It was over, but I didn't feel relieved. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I packed my bags that night and checked out early. I couldn't stay there another minute. The hotel staff apologized, but it didn't change what had happened. I left, feeling shaken. My trust in the safety of these places forever changed. As I packed my bags, my hands were still trembling. I kept thinking about how I'd felt so safe when I first arrived. Now, I knew that feeling safe isn't always the same as being safe. The whole thing made me realize how important it is to listen to your gut. If something or someone feels wrong, it's okay to be cautious, to ask questions, or to get help. As I left the hotel, I felt a little stronger, like I had learned something important. The whole thing made me realize how important it is to listen to your gut. I knew from then on, I would always trust my instincts and be more aware of my surroundings. It was a scary experience, but it taught me a lot about being careful and looking out for myself, even in places where I'm supposed to feel safe. I was super excited to head back to my hometown for the high school reunion. It had been ages since I last walked those familiar streets, and I couldn't wait to catch up with old friends and share laughs about our school days. Since my folks had also moved away to the coast only a couple of years after I left home, I needed a place to stay. That's when I found this new booking website for a cozy little hotel near our reunion spot. It seemed perfect, just what I needed for my short trip. I arrived the evening before my reunion. The place looked nice, just like it did in the pictures. The lobby was filled with comfy sofas and paintings that gave it a homey feel. I handed over my ID and credit card, smiling as I told them my name, ready to check in and relax. But the smile quickly faded when the person behind the desk looked up, puzzled, and said, "I'm sorry, but we don't have a booking under your name." Confused, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my emails until I found the booking confirmation. "Here it is," I said, showing them the screen. But their response only confused me more. "We don't recognize this booking number. Are you sure you booked with us?" Unsure of what to think, I stepped outside and called the customer service number listed on the booking. The guy on the line had a strange tone, almost too calm, apologizing for the mix-up with my booking. He had some strange explanation of online bookings being handled differently and not by reception. He assured me everything was sorted now and my room was ready, just not the one I originally booked. "Consider it an upgrade," he said in a voice that tried too hard to be comforting. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but the thought of finally getting some rest after the long day of traveling pushed my doubts to the side. I followed the instructions texted to my phone, a modern touch, I guessed, leading me to my upgraded room. But when I found the key under the mat and opened the door, my heart sank. The room clearly belonged to someone else. Their stuff was scattered everywhere. This wasn't right. I dialed the website's support number again, the feeling of unease growing. The same voice answered too quickly, apologizing and directing me to yet another room. This time, there were no signs of a previous guest, but the whole situation felt off. I mean, what kind of hotel operates like this? Trying not to overthink it, I took my shoes off and got comfortable on the bed. I switched on the TV and texted my friends to check on the reunion plans for the next day. We all agreed that we would get together for drinks at the Thunder's Bar on Main Street prior to the event at school. I could hardly believe that place still existed after all these years. During the night, I could swear I saw shadows and heard voices outside my room, but I was so tired. I told myself it was just my imagination, or maybe a group of inconsiderate guests. But in the morning, as I was about to head out to a breakfast spot downtown, I discovered my rental car, with all 4 tires deflated. I walked to the hotel's front desk feeling angry and hopeful at the same time. Maybe they had cameras outside that caught whoever messed with my car. "Excuse me, my car's tires were all flattened this morning. Do you have security cameras that might have seen anything?" The person behind the desk, a young guy with a sympathetic look, sighed before responding. "I'm really sorry to hear about your car. Unfortunately, I've been told our security cameras are temporarily out of service. I am not sure of the details, but apparently there's some wiring issues." His apology sounded genuine, but it didn't do much to calm my frustration. I asked if anyone else had reported anything similar, But he told me that he just started his shift and that it's only his second day on the job. He looked genuinely concerned, but it was clear I wasn't going to get any help from the hotel's non-existent camera footage. Walking away from the desk, I felt a heavy mix of disappointment and unease. But with the reunion hours away and pre-drinks planned for the evening, I had to think fast. I remembered one of my buddies from high school, Dave, ran his own garage in town. He wasn't on the group chat yet that I started when I got the reunion invite, but I managed to find his business online and couldn't believe it when he answered the phone himself. He promised to swing by with a compressor to inflate the tires when he finished work. "Old times' sake," he joked, but I could hear the concern in his voice. I started to get a little freaked out by this whole thing. I decided to grab a coffee and something to eat from the cafe across the street, and to catch up on the work I brought with me. Dave showed up at around 3 p.m. and fixed the tires in no time, insisting it was on the house when I tried to pay. "Catch up later at Thunder's?" he suggested, and I nodded, grateful for his normal, reassuring tone. With the car fixed, I jumped through the shower, got dressed, and headed out, the day's strange events momentarily pushed to the back of my mind. Thunder's bar was exactly how I remembered it, dimly lit, with the same neon sign flickering outside. Walking in, I was hit by a wave of nostalgia so strong it almost made me forget the morning's trouble. Friends I hadn't seen in years greeted me with open arms, some looking exactly the same, others barely recognizable. We laughed over old jokes, recalled some of our best high school pranks, and shared stories of life's ups and downs since we last met. For a while, everything felt perfect. But then, my phone buzzed. A message from the hotel, vague and unsettling, claiming there was an urgent issue with my room that needed my immediate attention. I thought about ignoring it, but the sense that something was really wrong was too strong. I apologized to my friends and promised to be back soon. When I got to the hotel, I noticed my room door was open. I entered carefully, hitting the light switch, but the power in my room was out. I stuck my head back outside and looked both ways. The other room lights were on. It was just my room that was completely dark. I used my phone's flashlight to see, and that's when I noticed all my stuff was gone. My computer, my bag, even my favorite sneakers that I had left on the floor beside the bed. Someone had taken everything. That's when I heard the door slam shut. I ran to open it, but it was locked from the outside. Suddenly I was trapped, and I had no idea what was going on. Then, I heard a hissing sound and smelled something weird. It was gas leaking into the room. This was super dangerous. I could get really sick from breathing it in, or worse, it could catch fire. I tried not to panic, but knew I had to get out fast. I started kicking and banging the door as hard as I could to try and break it open. I stood back so I could run at the door and bang harder. But then, out of nowhere, I felt a painful blow to my head and I fell to the ground. As I lay on the floor, no control over my eyes slowly closing, I saw someone in leather boots, a long leather jacket, and a hard object in their hands leaving the room quickly. The next thing I remember is hearing my friend Dave's voice as I was waking up. "Dude, are you okay?" He was worried when I left the bar so suddenly. When he drove up to the hotel, he saw a bunch of weird-looking guys standing outside my room. And when they saw Dave's car lights, they ran away super fast in the direction Dave just came from. Suddenly, he remembered the dark red van parked down the road, the one he just passed, and that he saw earlier that day when he came to help with the tires. He banged open my locked door and found me knocked out on the floor. Once Dave helped me out of the room, we called the cops, and they showed up super fast. It turned out that the hotel thing was a big scam. A group of guys were tricking people into booking rooms through fake websites. Then, they used that money to actually book the room for real, so they had a key and could sneak in and steal stuff from guests like me. Then they would scare the guests into wanting to leave as soon as possible, and maybe just because they got a kick out of seeing their reactions. Dave's observation about the van ended up being a big clue. The police decided to look for and follow the red van after that. One day it led them to a warehouse where they found all sorts of stuff that had been reported stolen over the last 6 months, and they were able to catch these guys and have their websites taken down. I feel angry when I think about these guys playing such a sick trick on me and ruining my reunion. But hey, in the end, I guess I got lucky. I got most of my stuff back. Dave and I rekindled our brotherly bond, and the guys from school think me and Dave are kinda like heroes now, which feels pretty cool. Most of all, I am just really glad those idiots got caught.